Unfortunately here, going second, we'll see how well his deck can line up.
And we know how powerful the deck could be, but let's see how it plays out now. As Min decides to commit his first card. Looks like he does have some of those Malice Trap cards, but not setting them first just to sort of bluff out his opponent. He's just going to commit to Dormouse.
Yeah, here's the best one. I actually think it's the Dominus Impulse that he might have.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, if it's Dominus Impulse, that really could be huge there.
I think over time people have just kind of understood that the Malice Trap set bluff may not be as valuable because there's only two that you could even use, and you really only want to activate one of them in that situation anyway, so.
It was so important and so discussed at Anaheim, but you're right, I haven't seen it done since, at least not on the featured match stage.
So taking a look here, it's really important to take a look at the extra deck to see what pathway Min is going to go for. And again, he is 5-0 here, so whatever his decisions were heading into this event in terms of what the extra deck looks like, has certainly worked out for him thus far. And looking through it, it seems like he has the Abawake. It seems like he has the Nightmare Griffin package. I don't see Terahertz. I actually do see a Firewall Dragon, which is kind of an interesting card to continue playing, that being a piece of sort of the older combo. But assuming this goes uninterrupted, we may potentially be able to see how he has decided to establish Nightmare Griffin in the middle column.
Nightmare Griffin certainly showing how powerful it is. There's been a lot of Nightmare Griffin combos in the last year or so. I remember seeing things like Memento being able to establish it pretty easily, and it is very strong. People really have to respect that card from the extra deck. It is not just a novelty. It is a real card.
Here we see a Link Decoder.
Nothing too crazy just yet, but looks like, oh, using a Bystial Druid's Worm to get rid of his own Dormouse. Another monster on the field, and of course be able to pay 300 life points shortly.
And presumably he'll be bringing back that Dormouse. All right. Oh, interesting. So
wow.
Yeah, this is an interesting sequence where you're kind of trying to see if your opponent has anything, and then using Shifter at kind of this unique point.
Yeah, because effectively he emptied out his graveyard so he could discard the Dimension Shifter while still being able to get all his other card combos out. That's really clever there to sort of see if his opponent had anything and then go ahead and drop the Shifter.
I wonder if he outright knows his opponent is on this strategy, which is why he valued Shifter, because Dormouse presumably could have done a whole lot more, and I think he has a Dominus Impulse. So even if there was a Nibiru, he has the Impulse in hand.
You're right that it was a relatively conservative turn, effectively, but when you're in a battle city like a YCS, you do hear stories. You're like, oh, that's the guy playing Mermails, right? Because everyone's so excited to see it do so well. Well, if he knows, then he made a good board, and oh, wow, really? That's enough? Yeah, he's going to concede.
A card that right now may not be popular in the main decks to quite the extent that it could be just 1 week from now.
Well, we're on game 2 here. Looks like Min is taking a look at the 5 cards. Maybe we haven't even gotten out of the standby phase here. Maybe we're seeing a Dimension Shifter after all.
Shifter check. No, I know he has an Ash Blossom in hand, but all right. So it does look like we'll be able to proceed into the main phase.
So Gaddafi is going to have to finally reveal what strategy he's playing if Min doesn't already know.
So he has 1 Minstrel in his deck. In previous Mermail Atlantean feature matches showed us that a lot of times there are 2 additional ones in the side deck for when you get to go first, which is exactly what Gaddafi is doing here. He has now 3 copies of DC Minstrel in his deck, so we could presumably have that as an opening play if it's accessible to him. But no, instead he's going to start with the Spike, discarding the brand new Poseidra, the Storming Atlantean. What's a little bit different between this and Saith's deck from earlier is that Gaddafi is electing to play fully 3 copies of Poseidra, the brand new Storming Atlantean.
I think we got our answer here. I don't know that Min knew that Gaddafi was playing the Mermails because he definitely took a moment to read that. And there's no problem with that, but it's just you got to know what it is that your opponent's actually doing.
Many years ago, this would be searching a Gen X Undyne, but nowadays we're searching an Abyshrine, the Atlantean Spirit.
Well, at the time, there was some great Gen X support last year, so maybe they'll meet again.
You never
somewhere.
know. Never know. It was just such a great feeling to open that, or just open Undyne itself with Allure of Darkness in your water deck to banish the controller.
Good.
Oh, the value. Oh, this might be a Drone Lockbird, which
that could be very difficult
will be
to
pretty
play.
difficult because not even getting a Dragoon activation off at all, now being able to play, or not being able to play with Dragoons for the rest of the turn, it's going to be pretty brutal because we've seen previously these Mermail Atlantean decks really take off when they get to resolve not 1, not 2, but 3 or 4 different Dragoon activations, whether it's detaching a Bahamut Shark or otherwise. So this Drone Lockbird is one of the most popular side deck cards, and honestly a card we've seen in some main decks this weekend. It's one of the reasons why, you know, this Mermail Atlantean deck and even the Crystron deck, I think to a certain extent, are just in an environment that may not necessarily be conducive to them, because if you're going to bring those strategies, you really need to dodge as many Drone Lockbirds as possible, because both of those strategies really rely on it.
Well,
but as things can change, as you mentioned, so who knows a few months from now if that will be different, but popularity of Drone Lockbird is definitely something that's going to be tough.
Earlier we were talking about the battle between fire and water, and it looks like the Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring stopped just the one thing that Gaddafi could try to get through, and so now play passes back over to Min, who draws for turn.
Oh, it's really unfortunate for Gaddafi is he has 6 between 3 Fualos and 3 Perulia, but they're probably all in his side deck at this point. Or, you know, he has 3 copies of Crossout Designators, so maybe keep 1 and 1 in. So it's not inconceivable that he has one of those right now, but, you know, the makeup of his deck having gone first right now, probably not as ideal to just pass with a blank field, but well, do look at that. No Malice cards in sight.
Really? Okay. Interesting. Oh, never mind. Looks like he drew his card for the effect, but now we have Malice and Underground going to go ahead and banish.
What we saw there was the Shrine effect, so I didn't notice the banish there. It just kind of looked like he had drawn as if the Malice player had passed back and this Min had passed back, so it does make sense why we saw Gaddafi there draw a card.
It did look, if you had no idea, it looked like he passed turn, and so it was nothing. But no, it does look like we're paying 300 life points here, and the Dormouse reappears.
So now we have a Dormouse effect. Which would, you know, in theory, let him banish a copy of White Rabbit. Gaddafi's giving it a quick read. Certainly if there is a way of interacting with that, we should see it hit the field here. Yeah, it looks like there's a copy of Effect Veiler, so the Dormouse remains there on the board, but no effect.
Min considering his options here, that may have certainly slowed him down. Obviously, Effect Veiler perfectly timed, because if there was a Dimension Shifter there, you're definitely not sending the card from your hand to the graveyard.
So the thing with Dormouse to remember is it reminds me of Sword Soul Taya, kind of back when we were talking a lot about the Sword Soul Taya versus Moye.
Oh, but the call by the grave, so critical here.
I was going to say that if this Dormouse just sits there for a turn, which you never know, Gaddafi's down to just 2 cards in hand, he'd actually just be able to activate Dormouse again on the following turn. But wow, look at this.
Just making sure it happens, infinite impermanence. And here is going to be the vital moment. Obviously, Dormouse's effect is negated. But if there's anything left there, this could be a very explosive turn. The Gaddafi only has 1 card left to stop, whatever it may be.
And that card also, it either needs to be defensive now, but the problem is if it's defensive here, then he needs to draw something off the top of his deck to just deal with the Dormouse outright, because otherwise he can just activate Dormouse's effect on the next turn. So Gaddafi's in a really difficult position because he's kind of being hit from 2 different directions here. That Dormouse is a threat, and any extender in the hand is a threat. Well, so if that card in hand is a point of interaction, great. He buys himself a draw phase, but that draw phase needs to deal with the Dormouse.
Definitely need to page Neptibus, the Atlantean Prince there, and show us that glorious 1-card combo, because I don't know what else you could do in this situation, but it seems like Min is paused too. Maybe he doesn't have too much further to go. It could just be Dormouse attack.
Yeah, Dormouse attack.
Wow, okay. So we really have ourselves a game here as things kind of slow down for both duelists.
I mean, he used Abyss Bike last turn. I have to imagine that he would have just led with Neptibus if that was one of the cards in his opening hand.
True, so he's got to draw it now.
So presumably that card in hand is not that. It's not one of the Mulch Armies that he kept in. It's probably not a card like Crossout Designator.
Shuffling, I can just not quite make it out.
I think one of those is an Ash Blossom. He's going to need some piece of engine right now, or at least just a monster big enough to attack over Dormouse, which only has 900 attack.
All right, he's considering, even I'm on the edge of my seat just being like, okay.
Oh,
is that a pass?
Oh, I think
it is
may
a pass.
So this is the problem that I mentioned. He needed something to deal with that Dormouse. You don't often see just that Dormouse sit there, but if the game gets simplified where both players kind of throw a lot of hand interactions at one another and all of a sudden both players are down to 1 or 2 cards, this Dormouse turn after turn after turn.
Oh, and there it is. Going to go ahead and banish something, so imagine it'll be White Rabbit. We stick to the basics here. Oh, no, we're going for Chessy Cat.
So maybe he drew a copy of White Rabbit
That would be a
or
great way to work.
Dormouse.
Yeah.
And doing this is just a way of kind of filtering his hand a little bit.
Well, we're definitely cutting the deck, so I think that Chessy Cat is intent on using its effect.
Yeah, I could see it be a White Rabbit.
All right, so what are we going to banish? Yeah, there's the White Rabbit. So draw 2, pay 300, and get another Maliss monster onto the field. Still, Gaddafi's hanging in there.
And now he is technically only down to the Dormouse effect from the Banish Zone, at least in terms of the main deck monsters.
And it may be unlikely that 7,100 points of damage could be dealt during this turn. So Gaddafi may be saying, okay, I've got 2 cards. I just need 1 more, and I can have a great combo.
Well, I think between Axis Kotaker, which I have to imagine is in his deck, it is in fact in his deck, and some of the Hearts Cryptor combos, 71 may not quite be enough. We'll see if he can navigate through it, but also potentially play around Nibiru. You have to imagine that if your opponent has these 2 cards in hand, one of them wasn't big enough to attack over the Dormouse the previous turn. You know, Nibiru is on the list of cards that would make sense in their hand, because it can't be an engine piece, because basically every engine piece would either attack over it or just be outright a combo in and of itself.
But get this. What if it's just the confidence that Gaddafi had, effectively sitting there hanging in the duel, threatening Nibiru just with confidence that led Min to have a conservative turn and only attack with just the Hearts Cryptor?
This is going to be in battle phase, so it's fine, because once you just enter into battle phase, these additional summons,
It's not even an issue anymore.
it's not much of an issue anymore.
Because
So
we're out of the main phase.
yeah, so it's what I was mentioning is, he could presumably